Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Thankfully, I no longer have to worry about employee feedback forms and appraisal meetings. But you know what? Even the words conjure up flashbacks of how not to handle feedback, even if it is meant to be constructive. No one wants to be told in the workplace they're a 2 out of 5, and hey, that's cool. When if you saw a holiday on TripAdvisor for 2 out of 5 or something for sale on Amazon for 2 or 3 out of 5, would you buy it? Of course you wouldn't. But employee engagement has been a long-standing issue within many industries, and the tech industry is no different. But new research from a company called CultureAmp found that new tech companies may actually have a leg up on those traditional tech companies. I mean, should we be surprised that a younger, more agile startup or tech company actually moves faster than those established companies that have become shackled by their own red tape, process and that deeply embedded culture? Well, I invite you to find out more about what this report reveals by beaming your ears all the way to Australia today, so we can speak with Jason McPherson, the Chief Scientist at CultureAmp. So a big welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
I am currently the Chief Scientist at CultureAmp, and that was a title given to me by the CEO. I think he always wanted to just have a chief scientist in his company. We are a tech platform that helps people collect feedback with inside organisations, and my role is really to the science of psychology to our platform. So my job has always been to put together questions that people use in their organisations and get the questions right. And do a lot of the statistics and data science and things like that behind the scenes as well.
Now, I've got to tell you, after 350 podcast recordings, Chief Scientist has got to be the coolest job title I've heard so far.
Yeah, well, I've tried to give it up a few times to get a new title, but people have unanimously said that's a great title, so you should stick with it. So absolutely. I'm happy to stick with it for now.
Now, fortunately, I no longer have to feel that pain of employee feedback forms or appraisal meetings. And I say fortunately because I always felt the system was in many ways broken and just didn't work. But when I came across CultureAmp, I felt that warm glow of hope for everyone still out there in that 9-to-5 life. But for anyone listening today, I mean, can you offer an overview of CultureAmp, what problems it solves, and how you're tackling that age-old problem with new technology?
I think we saw the use of technology in this space as a place to sort of an opportunity to think about it all freshly again. So we've really started from the premise that ultimately when the feedback is a good thing, and so we tried to design everything so it is focused on feedback for good. So we assume that people are going to do good things with feedback, and we're going to make it easy and funner and more immediate. And so really just using feedback as an opportunity. And, as you said, like a lot of people's experiences sometimes with these really clunky kind of things where you're filling out a paper survey, and surveys for a long time felt like they were, even though we had great technology in mobile apps, people were still using radio buttons with surveys. And so a lot of the stuff we were doing is let's make it look and feel different, and also focus everything on the positive of what you're doing in terms of getting feedback.
Now, we've seen a lot of traditional companies get disrupted by quicker and younger startups, especially over the last few years. But what captured my attention with CultureAmp there was your discovery of the differences between new tech organisations and traditional tech organisations, actually when it came to employee engagement and motivation. I mean, can you share some of those differences?
Yeah, certainly. So we one of the first things that we found was that in the area that we work in, which is going into organisations and getting feedback and trying to measure something that that's called employee engagement. First of all, like new tech companies weren't really doing this traditionally. So they were incredible adopters of new technology to do this. So old companies were like, oh no, we have to use a consultant to do this. We have to use consultants to understand or help us understand our employees. So the first difference is that new tech companies were like, no, we can use a tool to do this. We can do it ourselves. So they were interested in doing it themselves. And then a whole range of other things that, you know, we have these, you have these cliches of new tech companies, you know, offering free food and all these different perks to their employees, but they often do a lot of other things too. So there's this, and some of it comes from, you know, tech companies being predominantly engineering focused, and there's a huge kind of emphasis on learning and development, and you know, just and learning on the job, learning yourself. Most people who do coding, etc., are often self-taught, or at least, you know, they went to university, but it wasn't actually where they learned most of their skills. So in new tech companies, one of the huge differences is this emphasis on learning and development. And what we found is that that's one of the things that really drives and helps people feel really engaged with their companies anyway. And now we're seeing that flow through into other companies. But certainly new tech companies sort of have seemed to be way out ahead of other companies in that respect.
As regards to what you do as well, I believe at CultureAmp there are 6 key areas that you focus on to improve that employee engagement. Can you expand on those a little?
Yeah, we have found leadership, learning and development, being able to make a positive difference in the world or to your profession as well is another huge thing. So yeah, they're some of the key things. We also know that company confidence, so people want to feel that their company is actually going to do well, especially people who are high performing. They want to know that they're on they're with a company that's going to, you know, be successful, that they're involved in the company, involved in the decision making of the organisation, and then that they feel they're collaborative and communication works well in the company as well. So they're the kind of 6 main areas that we have found consistently lead to people feeling connected with their organisation.
Now, it does seem that many companies will throw technology at problems that don't even exist, especially HR departments and their fluffy ways. But that's just my IT side coming out from my past there. But in your opinion, what do new tech employees need for insights, and how to drive engagement and retention?
Driving engagement and retention is that it's really connection. So it's feeling connected to the leadership. It's feeling connected to the company's vision. It's feeling connected to their own careers and contribution, and feeling connected to the world more generally. So one of the clearest ways we can explain this is really just that the company allows people to feel connected in lots of different ways. So that's probably the simplest way I could put it. And if we're always thinking, okay, how are our employees connected to us, connected to the world, connected to their own careers, connected to their contribution, that's probably the simplest way I could put it.
So when talking about employee feedback, what are the biggest mistakes that you see companies making again and again that, you know, you try and fix?
I think one of the things that we see happening is people just asking their employees the same questions over and over again. And I don't mean like using the same questions in a survey, but like we've seen a lot of people moving, because we are now able to use technology to do things like pulsing people every day, or asking people every week for, you know, questions delivered via technology. So one of the biggest mistakes I see is people going, oh, well, because we can do this, we're going to do it. We're going to ask people every day, every week, the same questions. So that's one of the big mistakes I've seen most recently, I would say. So the most important thing is that when you're asking people for feedback, it needs to feel intelligent to them. So if you're in a conversation, you don't just ask the same question over and over again. You progress the conversation. So that's the biggest mistake I see recently anyway. People just, you know, kind of using technology to speed up the conversation, but not make it more intelligent.
Yeah. So how does the CultureAmp employee feedback and analytics platform work? And also, probably more importantly, how does it stop organisations from drifting back to their old ways?
Well, our platform works in that you can go in there and you've got a starting point. So we've got a team of IO psychologists. So we give you templates for asking questions. So that's the first thing. So you've actually got a good starting point for that conversation I was talking about. You've got good questions to start the conversation. We then have a range of analytics. So if you use something like SurveyMonkey, you would just get this data back. Whereas in the CultureAmp platform, you'll get you'll get analytics that are purpose-driven in terms of how they will give you insights from the data and the questions that we've set you up with. So you get good analytics. And how do you stop going, off in the going back to the old behaviours? Well, there's a lot of encouragement in our platform that drives you towards finding a focus in your data. So it doesn't really help if you analyse it for 100 days and do nothing. The most important thing is that you get your data, you can quickly find a focus, and we have analytics that help you do that. We have this thing called the Focus Agent, which is a kind of algorithm-driven thing that will help you find a focus in your data and really just encouraging you towards action and continuing that conversation in a richer way rather than just getting bogged down in analysing your data and not even talking to your employees again. So, and that's really it. The most important thing is you don't just go off and get lost in the data and not talk to your employees or the people in your organisation.
So what kind of feedback have you received from your clients? I mean, do you have any use cases of before and after comparisons? Just to help listeners visualise how it can make that real difference with tangible results.
Yeah, so we get loads of feedback from our clients. So then we're a feedback company, so we love getting feedback, and we're always searching for stories and things from our clients. I mean, one of the key things that always resonated with me was in tech companies, you often have a lot of people who are engineers who've become managers, and sometimes when they've got this data, it's kind of a really empowering thing for them because they're like, hey, I thought this might be happening, but I couldn't do anything about it till I saw some data, and then they go and have been able to have really rich conversations with employees. Because now they have some data, they can start that conversation by saying, hey, I've got this feedback that we're not doing X fantastically. Can you help me understand more about that and we can do something about it? So, that's one of the key pieces of feedback we get, which is that we provide data in a nice way that people can actually then begin a really rich conversation. So that's one of the key things. The other thing is that I remember a leader saying to me that, hey, I've got my feedback now on my data, and the company that I thought I was running is different from the one that I'm actually running based on this data. And he was able to, it was like, wow, I can actually manage the company that I really am running rather than the one that I thought I was running. And that was only possible through getting, this real live data back to him.
So what's next for CultureAmp? Is there anything else you can share with us today?
What's next for CultureAmp? Well, I think one of the things that we really want to do is just as you were saying, that feeling when you like a lot of people's experience with feedback is giving the feedback in the surveys themselves, or they send this feedback off, up to the leadership, etc. And one of the things that we're working on now is really making that feedback real for every employee. So we now have feedback for individual employees. So individual employees can get feedback from their colleagues and get a sense of how they're going, and they get something. Individuals get something themselves from this process. So I think that's the next thing for CultureAmp. We want to make feedback something that's powerful and real for every employee. It's not just this thing you send up to the leadership, but it's something that we do amongst every employee.
Well, a huge thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I mean, can you remind the listeners of your web address and contact details for your team if anyone listening has any questions about what we've talked about before I let you get off?
Yeah, so you can contact us at www.cultureamp.com or peoplegeek.io, and you can reach out to the team at CultureAmp.com or anyone at CultureAmp.com. So that's the web address, and you'll find all the contact details there.
Well, a huge thanks again for coming on, especially because I think this is a first for the show, because it's the first time I've spoke to a chief scientist who's got up at 7 a.m. in the morning to speak with me on the following day. That's enough to make my head explode right there. You really have gone above the call of duty, so a big thanks for taking the time to come on.
No worries. Thank you so much, Neil.
The recording of today's podcast literally blew my mind. I mean, I recorded the show on a Monday evening here in the UK and spoke to Jason there on a Tuesday morning in Australia. But when you also throw in the fact that he's a chief scientist too, I had to stop myself from saying, "Great Scott!" Now, I've thought that employee feedback and those dreaded appraisals in the corporate land have been broken for years. And admit it, we all cringe at the very mention of the words. And that also includes the anonymous feedback form with the unique identified URL that gives you just that hint of paranoia. I'm really not surprised that younger and more agile companies are faster moving than those established companies that are shackled by that process and deeply embedded culture. But once again, this report for me highlights how rather than carry on with the same way of doing things and expecting different results, it's time for a change. And I think we all know this deep down, and this report puts the meat on the bone, so to speak.
Where do you listen to the show? On a walk or run? When cooking or washing the dishes? At the gym? Walking the dog? Or is the Tech Blog Writer podcast the soundtrack to your commute? Why not let Neil know by tweeting him at Neil C. Hughes, or say hello on the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/techblogwriterpodcast.
How does the organisation you work for handle employee feedback? I mean, does it work? Do you have any good examples? Or do you have any bad examples? As always, email me, tweet me. I'm the easiest guy to find online, and I'll reply to all messages as long as it's not a sales pitch. Why not get to know me first before going there? Seriously though, I will see you all bright and early tomorrow, so don't be late. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.